Hello everyone, welcome to part 3 of the chapter on homeostasis and hormonal control. Okay, this chapter is split into 4 parts, and for today I will be talking about hormones, the concept of hormones, the definition of hormones, and I will be doing a bit of a revision with you with a hormone that you are familiar with from chapter 8, ADH, okay, or we call this hormone anti-diuretic hormone. Okay, so let's begin. The syllabus, right, for this particular video is this. You must define a hormone as a chemical substance produced by a gland. The hormone is carried by the blood, and the hormone will alter the activity of one or more specific target organs. Okay, quite a mouthful, but yeah, later on when I show you the definition, it's actually quite a big definition. Okay, you must also explain what is meant by an endocrine gland. I will explain to you what is endocrine and exocrine, okay, with reference to the islets of Langerhans in the pancreas. Okay, so the islets of Langerhans, right, is considered an endocrine gland. And finally, I will do a bit of revision with you on the role of ADH in osmoregulation. Okay, this is also similar to the theory that you have studied in chapter 8. So for hormones, right, that is going through homeostatic control, there will only be actually three hormones that you are in this syllabus, that you will know in this syllabus. The first two is in chapter 5, which you already know, okay, insulin and glucagon. All right, so just a bit of recap. Insulin increases when blood glucose increases above normal, insulin is produced. When blood glucose decreases below normal, glucagon is produced. Okay. In the fourth video, I will be going through revision with you in this, but I will not talk about them in this video. Okay. What I will talk about later on is of course on the regulation of water potential, which is also found in chapter 8. All right. And there is only one hormone involved in this, and that is ADH. Okay, it is just about more or less. So when the water potential increases above normal in the blood, there will be less ADH produced, and the opposite will occur. Okay, when the water potential decreases below normal, more ADH will be produced. All right, so quite confusing, quite careless. Yes, you can end up writing wrongly. Try not to do that. Okay, try to practice more through writing. Okay, so hormones. Let's start with the definition. It is a chemical substance produced in minute quantities by an endocrine gland. All right, I'll talk about endocrine gland later on. This hormone, right? Hormones are all released directly into the blood. Okay, nowhere else. They go straight into the blood, and they need the blood to transport them around. So they will be transported by the blood, right, to target organs. Okay, target organs, right, are organs that is being targeted by the hormones. Quite literal. All right. And what the hormone do, right, is that the hormone will exert its effects on the target organ. So it depends on the hormone. Okay, different hormone will have different effects. After the hormone exert the effects, right, when the hormone is done exerting the effects, it is destroyed in the liver and it will be excreted by the kidney. Okay, so the hormones, right, some hormones cannot stay in the body for too long because it is very strong and it will keep exerting the effect. So once the body reaches homeostasis, right, the need for the hormone will no longer be needed. All right, and so the body will get rid of it. Okay, so in order for the body to get rid of it, right, it has to be broken down in the liver and of course excreted by the kidneys. So they are known as chemical messengers. Okay, they are able to influence growth and development of an organism. In this video, I will not be introducing to you other types of hormones that is not in syllabus, but actually our body, right, has quite a number of them. Okay, if you Google hormones in our body, you will see quite a number of hormones. Okay, but under the syllabus, you need to know a few. And for this video, right, I will talk about just ADH. Okay, so there are two types of glands, okay, that can produce substances. All right, hormones fall under what we call endocrine gland. Okay, endocrine gland, right, do not have a duct. So we use the word ductless to describe. And so the substance, right, is being released directly into the bloodstream. Okay, and there is no tube that connects the substance to the final destination. Okay, examples of endocrine glands, right, is the pancreas, the islets of Langerhans, the pituitary gland of the hypothalamus, which you are familiar with because of chapter 8, and later on, right, you will study the ovaries and the testes. Okay, so these are glands, right, that falls under the endocrine system, and they don't have tubes. Okay, they don't have ducts. On the other hand, right, some glands have tubes, and you're more familiar with them. Okay, exocrine glands, right, are glands with a duct, so they contain a tube, and the secretions, right, will go through the tube. Okay, example, salivary gland. Okay, the pancreas is also considered an exocrine gland because it has a pancreatic duct. All right, for saliva, I'm not sure if you know, but when saliva is being released into the mouth, it is being released through salivary ducts. Okay, so there is a tube. And so this falls under the group known as exocrine. For hormones, right? Hormones are all under the endocrine system. So let's start with the mini revision about ADH. Okay, so this is like a model answer. But before that, right? Let's talk a little bit of introduction. ADH is also known as anti-diuretic hormone. Okay, you can write this as a whole. It is better, I feel. Okay, it is produced by the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus in the brain, right, produces ADH, but the release of ADH into the blood, right, is through the pituitary gland. Okay, so be careful with these two terms. All right. Now, what ADH does generally, right, is that it stimulates the increase in absorption rate. So as long as there's ADH in the blood, right, water molecules can be absorbed from the collecting duct into the blood. And collecting duct is part of the nephron, right? So as long as there's ADH, water can be reabsorbed. But if I have more ADH, then I can reabsorb more. If I have less ADH, then I reabsorb less. Okay? So let's talk about when water potential in the blood increases above normal levels. For example, if you drink a lot of water, okay? So when the body detects an increase in water potential in the blood above normal levels, right? The hypothalamus will be stimulated, okay? And the hypothalamus will produce less ADH. Because the hypothalamus produces less ADH, right, the pituitary gland will also release less ADH into the blood. So generally, right, the concentration of ADH in the blood will drop. Okay, and because the concentration of ADH decreases, the collecting duct, right, becomes less permeable, okay, of the nephron. And because it is less permeable, right, the reabsorption rate of water will decrease. Okay, and because when the reabsorption rate of water decreases, more water is channeled to the urine, and so more water is channeled as urine out of the body, and so the volume will increase. Because the volume increase, right, the concentration of urine will decrease. Okay, so this too, right, is quite important. Even though some students might get a little bit confused. Okay, volume and concentration is not the same. I can talk about more volume in terms of urine because the volume is contributed by water. Okay, concentration on the other hand is contributed by the solutes in urine. For example, salts, urea, okay, so on and so forth. So all this increase in volume, right, will cause the water potential in the blood to decrease back to normal. Alright, so this is what happens when the water potential in the blood will increase above normal. Okay, if you learn how to write this, then you will know how to write the opposite. Alright, but since I'm talking about this in the video, I will go through the opposite as well. What happens when water potential decreases below normal levels? Okay, so it's the same thing. Alright, the hypothalamus will still be stimulated, but this time it will produce more ADH. And so the pituitary gland will release more ADH into the blood. The collecting duct will become more permeable so that more water molecules can be reabsorbed. Okay, when more water molecules in the collecting duct is being reabsorbed into the blood, then the urine volume will decrease because there will be less water being expelled out of the body. If there is less water being expelled out of the body, the urine actually increases in concentration. Alright? Through all this process, right, the water potential in the blood will increase back to normal. Okay, so this is exactly the same style as the previous one. Yeah, it's like a model answer. Okay, so just remember this. And if you encounter a free response question that talks about this, yeah, just write, but please be careful on how you write. Okay, so this is the end of part 3. It's pretty short, but actually I think I've elaborated and spent more time in the first part. Okay, so any questions, please ask. Thank you. Bye bye.